Mudakaratha Modakam sada vimukti sadakam kaladharavatam sakam vilasi lokarakshakam anayakaikanayakam vinashite madaityakam nadashubhashunashakam namamitam vinayakam vinayakam naketarati bhikaram navodikarkabhasvaram namatsurari nirjaram nakadikapaduddharam sureshwaram nidhishwaram tajeshwaram ganeshwaram maheshwaram tamashaye paratparam nirantaram samastaloka shankaram nirastadevya kunjaram daredarodaram varam varevavatramakaram kripakaram shamakaram mudakaram yashaskaram manaskaram namaskritam namaskaromi bhasvaram namaskaromi bhasvaram akinchanakimarjanam chirantanokti bhajanam purari purvanantanam surari dharvacharvanam prapanchanasha bhishanam dhananjayadi bhushanam kapoladana varanam bhaje purana varanam bhaje purana varanam nikantakandi kandakandi mantakantakatmajam achintya rupamantahina mantaraya krintanam trikantare nirantaram vasantameva yoginam tamekadantameva tam vichintayami santatam nirantare nirantaram vasantameva yoginam tamekadantameva tam vichintayami santatam vichintayami santatam.
The gods, the humans, and the asuras went to Prajapati. And they said to Prajapati, say something to us, teach us. And Prajapati said to the gods, da. And he said to them, have you understood? And they said, yes. You said to us, Dhamika, be controlled. And the human said, say something to us. Guess what he said? He said, duh. And he said to them, have you understood? And they said to him, yes, we've understood. You said, Dhamika, generous, give. And the asuras came to him and said, give us the teaching. And he said to them, you can do it this time. Well done. And he said to them, and he said to them, have you understood? Have you understood? And they said, yes. You said to us, the other one, have compassion. And he said, you have understood. That's very good. I've got an excellent audience here. I've got some people who know the story, and some of you are looking just as puzzled as my colleagues were when I told them that story when I went to interview for my job. They also thought they got a complete nutcase on their hands. They were probably right. But now I tell that story to the beginning of my second year storytelling class. Only I tell it like this. There was this university lecturer, And her students came to her and they said, give us the teaching. And she said to them, this time in English, because last time it was in Sanskrit, ka, ka, ka. And she said to them, have you understood? And then they all went. I told them the original story first. Then I made them go away and I said, what do you want out of this course that begins with a ka in English? They came up with some wonderful things this year. They said they'd like some creativity. They said they'd like some clarity. They said they'd like me to be concise, and they said a few other things as well. Well, they got a few of those, but not all of them. So that ancient story, over 3,000 years old, knows that teachers can only teach when students want to learn. It was the students who came to the teacher and said, say something to us, give us the teaching. It knows that students have different needs. All Prajapati said was the. And they each heard something different. They heard 3 different Sanskrit words. They heard the word for be disciplined, they heard the word for be generous, they heard the word for be compassionate. They each heard what they needed to know. And so that text knows that teachers have to take students' needs seriously. And I think that's just a magnificent story. It's one of my absolute favourites, because it shows right from some of the earliest texts that we have from India, that understanding of the teacher-pupil relationship and what is involved in it. And it's a story that's terribly important to the author I'm going to talk to you a little bit about tonight, Adi Shankara, who is a very amazing author who I will introduce you to in a moment. Okay, so there he is in the middle, and he's got 4 disciples around him. Now his 4 disciples, whose names are up there, but I don't think you really need to write them down, were called Sureshwara, Padmapada, Advaita, and Durga. And they traditionally, as some of you will know, are associated with 4 of the great Shankara monks in India. And there is a tradition that Sureshwara was associated with Sringeri, Padmapada with Puri and Hastamalaka, and Durga with Dwaraka and Badrinath. Now, in fact, the first evidence that we have for that is in the 14th century, which is a long, long time after Adi Shankara, the first Shankara, actually lived. Probably he lived around 700 CE, centres of learning. But he is also called Shankaracharya, Shankara the teacher, or Shankara Pujapata. So somebody who's fit to worship as the teacher there. And so we're going to focus on him as a teacher. Now he belongs to a particular school called Advaita Vedanta. Right, the Vedanta school is a school which looks at the Upanishads. I think all of you will have heard of the Vedic texts. The Vedic texts have 4 layers, and the last of those layers are known as Upanishads, sometimes translated as secret teachings. And they come at the end, also at the culmination of the Veda. So the Vedanta school, Vedanta, the Vedanta school is the school which focuses on the texts that are the culmination of the Veda. And it has all sorts of different branches. One of those branches is Advaita Vedanta. And Advaita, now then, this is where you have to be ever so clever. Usually I do this on the board, so you'll have to just imagine the spelling in your heads. Right, take off the at the beginning of that first word up there, all right? Just said Advaita, all right? Now then, you have to be ever so clever and see if you can tell me a word in any language you speak, which might be the same as Dvai.
Jewel.
Well done, that man there. That's jewel in English, okay? Anybody give me anything? Zwei is cognate, yeah. Yeah, jewel, yeah. Dua, yes. Okay, so there's all sorts. What does it mean, basically? How many? 2. It means 2. So if Dvaita means 2, Dvaita is like not 2. So not 2, 1. Nothing other than. So in a minute, this is a puzzle, so you've got to keep it in your head. What is nothing other than? What is there nothing other than? I'm not even going to ask you yet. You'll have to hold the answer. Okay. So we're going to find out later on what he's talking about there. But for the moment, I'm just going to tell you about what he wrote. Okay, could we have the next? That's it, okay. So he wrote a lot of commentaries on these texts called the Upanishads, on probably 10 of them, wrote separate commentaries on all of them, commentaries which have been translated down to this day, and are very, very beautiful and very, very brilliant in many places, and they really are a joy to read if you happen to like reading commentaries. Now, in the Vedanta school, there was a series of verses, very, very short verses, which summarised the school and summarised the teaching of the Upanishads, and they were known as the Brahma Sutras. Sutra means a thread, so it's the thread on which the verses of this school, the school which taught about Brahman, ultimate reality, the key verses of this school. And those verses summarise the Upanishads. So he wrote commentaries on the Upanishads. He wrote a commentary on this very, very enigmatic text, the Brahma Sutra, which is, those of you who've read it will know it's almost impossible to understand without a commentary. The verses are extremely short. Verse 1 begins, Advaita, Brahma Jignasa. Now then, the desire to know will be inquired into Brahman. And he also wrote a commentary on a text that probably loads of you have read or know or have heard of, the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote a commentary on the Gita also. And those were the three sets of texts that any Vedantin commentator had to actually write on. So he takes a verse and he explains each word and then he explains the sentences, and then he might give you, he might, get really excited by this verse, and he might write several pages of Sanskrit, giving you some more teaching. He also wrote a text called, or at least bits of a text, called the Upanishads, the 1,000 Teachings, which has prose sections, that's into ordinary sentences, and it's got metric bits, that's bits that are in poetry, and those were the teachings that he gave on how to teach. So he also is attributed with loads and loads of other things, including the beautiful prayer that you sang at the beginning, but we're going to focus on what he teaches in these kinds of texts this evening. Okay, so 3 lots of commentaries and a teaching manual, and of course they are terribly important from a teaching point of view. All right, who knows who the 2 main characters are in the Bhagavad Gita? The scene is 2 sets of cousins in the Mahabharata about to go to war. Arjuna is there with Krishna as his charioteer, and Arjuna sees the people on the other side. And he realises that the people on the other side were his teachers, Drona, Krishna. And he says to Krishna, how can I fight them? They're my teachers. You wouldn't go and fight. Do they call you Dipaka? Yeah, Dipaka. You wouldn't go and fight Dipaka, would you? Terribly rude. You just don't go and fight your teacher. And for the rest of the Gita, Krishna explains to him how things really are. It's Krishna teaching Arjuna. So the Gita is all about, the Gita is all about teaching. Those other texts have got lots and lots of things to do with teaching, and perhaps we'll gloss over that for the moment. So now the question is, why am I interested in Shankara's teaching?